All right, so with this one, we're doing more advanced hard surface modeling. In the past assignment, the room, we kind of did a little bit of stuff. We broke basically when we did the text animations, when we did the environment, we had some simple stuff, the product a little bit more complex, and we're just adding more to that complexity of it. The idea with this one is that we're doing what's called box modeling. So we're starting off with a very simple shape and using extrusions and bevels and loops and all this stuff, we'll be able to create these really defined surfaces. We'll also be utilizing mirroring and sectional modeling so that we're not trying to build everything at once or everything like individually. We're building one piece and then able to copy that piece into several spots. Using cloners to replicate parts when needed. For the UVs for this one, it's going to be very simple because a lot of our stuff will be utilizing just basically like labels. So if you went back in time to like the 80s and before then, they had these things like model cars. On those model cars, you would get this sticker sheet, you'd peel the stickers off and you'd put the labels all over the car, basically wherever you wanted. That's essentially what we're going to be doing. We'll create a little sticker sheet inside of Illustrator of logos and labels and whatever else. And then when we're in KeyShot, we can just drop those into spots where we want these things to happen, okay? So our UV manipulation will actually be happening inside a KeyShot where we'll be just placing these textures inside there. Preparing the export into KeyShot, rendering an animation, and still from KeyShot. So our end result of this is like the product. We'll have a video of the thing taking off. It won't be a moving camera, it'll be a static camera, but the drone will kick up the propellers and then lift off the ground and then fly away, okay? Part of that will be done inside of Cinema. Part of that will be done inside of KeyShot. That way you can see how we would take animation from one software to another because sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes you don't. So I want you to see both ways. You'll turn in your final scene, your textures, your movie, and your still. So we should have a 6-second video at the end of this. The drone powering up, so no movement at all. It powers up, so the blades that start spinning. So obviously we have to be able to see the blades. And then it kind of like lifts off the ground and then flies away. Even though most drones don't kind of like wobble when they take off, they just like lift straight up. We're going to have a little wobble in there just to make it feel a little bit more natural. And then we'll do a still, a nice close angled still of the drone as well, 3000 by 2400. 25 points possible. That's it. Cool. Questions on the sheet? Nope. All right. Let's get into it. Oh, all right. So I'm going to open up Cinema. I'm going to create my project folder structure. I'm going to try to do that. P drive. Remember, even though it's our last big assignment, we still stay organized. Don't pay attention to any of that stuff down there. Project. There we go. All right, so I'm just going to save my project right into that folder, drone, scenes, drone. All right, and then just so we can see this, I'm going to get an image of a drone just so we can kind of use this as a little bit of reference. Okay, the first thing, that's different. I'm not sure if I like that, Google. Being on the side. All right, I'll deal with it for now. All right, so the first thing we want to pay attention to is that this is basically a symmetrical item, right? Like if we were to half this and then half that again, we basically have this corner piece that is the same thing on all 4 sides. Ignoring some things like maybe this cavity where the camera is, might not be on the other side. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. The least amount of work we can do, the better. So if I can model 1/4 of this and have Cinema automatically copy it to the other 3 sides, that's the best thing we can do, okay? So we want to set that up as well. This is very similar to how anything would happen as far as like car modeling. If you're looking at a car model, they model half of the car and have it flipped over to the other side. If they're doing a person, they'll do the same thing. They'll model half the person and have it flipped to the other side. If there's anything that is distinctive, let's say I'm doing a person, they have a scar on the right side of their face, they'll model it symmetrical, and then at the end, they'll add that scar on the right side of their face. Okay, they wouldn't do like try to put both there. And here's, you know, half of a car. Oh, Google, I gotta fix that. All right, so we're gonna set that up first. So this is box modeling, so I'm starting off with a very simple shape, and then I'm going to expand on that shape to get the rest of my stuff. The first thing I wanna do is set up my symmetricality. That's not a word, but we'll just pretend it is. As you model anything that you're trying to get symmetrical, never move it away from the origin, okay? I never want to grab this and pull it up or pull it back or pull it that way. I want to keep it exactly there. I can change the scale, the proportion, that's fine, but if you move it away, it becomes more difficult to set all the other stuff up. In order to get the symmetricalness of this, I need to have a division straight down the middle, have another division straight down the middle the other way. So I'm going to turn on my divisions so I can see them. And then I'm just going to add my divisions like this, and I think like that. Now I'm going to take this one step further. If I go back to the drone pictures here, and I look at this picture of a drone, I can also see, and it's not perfect, just like the scar on the side of a face, but vertically this is also very similar, right? So if I were to cut this straight down where this seam is, I would get basically like the top half and the bottom half are pretty close to being the same thing. Later on, yes, maybe I'll come back and have them different, but initially maybe I'll model them all as one piece, okay? So I'm also going to put a division this way. So I have two segments in X, Y, and Z. Now I'm going to go and delete all the faces except for 1/8 of this, okay? I can't delete faces yet until I hit C. Now I can select faces, and then now I can select these and delete. Okay, so that is 1/8 of my drone. Okay. Now notice if I switch to my top view, notice where the pivot is for this. Right at the origin. If I moved it away, it wouldn't be at the origin. It would be at some random spot. Okay? And if I switch to this view, notice how it's at the bottom of this. If I switch to this view, it's also at the bottom of that. So it's perfectly right at the origin, exactly where I need it. If it moved away, this whole process has to be adjusted. Okay? So it hasn't been moved, everything is cool. Now I'm going to start adding in a symmetry node, which if I remember is under this one, and it's under symmetry. So I'm going to hold down Alt and go to symmetry, and you'll see it automatically symmetrizes it. Okay, now this gives me just that piece. Now the cool thing about this is that if I have symmetry on there, whatever I do to one shape, it'll automatically do to the other shape. So if I go to this cube, I go to, let's say, this point, and I grab it, and I start moving it around, you'll see that the other side also moves, okay? So if I'm on my drone and I'm pulling out of, let's see, there we go. If I'm pulling this arm out of there, I'm also going to be pulling out that arm, pulling out this arm, pulling out that arm, okay? So now this is one part of the symmetry. I'm going to add another part. So I'm going to go to this symmetry, and I'm going to add another one in here. Symmetry again. The direction, you'll see that it didn't change. It's the exact same thing. The direction it does it is right here under mirror plane. This is the direction it's actually mirroring to the other side. Now you don't have to really know what this does. You just have to know that that's where we have to change it to get it to go into the different direction. Okay? Now for this type of thing, there are 3 different options. We will use all 3 of these options. So I'm going to do this again, add another symmetry, and then choose the bottom one. And so now I have all of my pieces back together. So if I were to grab one point and move it, you'll see how it moves all of those pieces at the same time. Now, you'll have to decide on yours, so you'll have to do your own little bit of thought process of how you want to do it. But something like this drone here, it looks like those legs are actually movable, so that would be a whole nother piece. That would not be part of the same body of a drone. This one looks like they're actually attached here, and those might be able to move. It looks like it, maybe not. I know for 100% that these ones are stuck to the body, okay? As you model this kind of stuff, I'm modeling it as whatever is one body, that's what I'm modeling, okay? So you have artistic license, you can modify stuff as long as it looks like a drone, looks like something that could really be there, it works, okay? If it doesn't, then it doesn't. Then you have to fix it. Here's another model. Again, this one looks like, if I zoom in on this, it looks like these might be all part of the same thing. Because that's kind of like overlapping, maybe those are separate pieces, but they're definitely not movable, okay? So I'm going to treat this as one big shape. My drone body with the arms coming out is all one shape. If you have the drone body as one shape, the arms are different shapes, it's the same process, you just have different shapes. You have more shapes than I will have, okay? All right, so before I do any actual modeling on this, a couple things we need to keep in mind. This edge right here, all the way around, is the don't touch edge, okay? I can touch it, I can move this up, that's no problem. I can move it this way, that's no problem. When I do this though, it breaks, okay? I have to keep that edge right on that edge. If I move it away from it, it goes bye-bye, okay? So I have to be very careful with how I adjust these points, and you'll see me lots of times grab just the arrows, or I'll grab just this little manipulator here. That manipulator only moves it in those two directions. It doesn't move it up and down, okay? Same thing here. If I grab this, I wouldn't use this arrow because it splits it and breaks it. I would use, let's say, this arrow. I lied. I would just use this. Okay? All right, so that's the gist. Yes, sir? To close it off? I could, but again, the least amount of work I can do, the better. Okay? So as long as I keep that edge there, we won't have any issues with that. If I do, it's not a huge deal. I just have to go back after and line everything back up and then make sure it still works. All right, so there's my initial shape. Now I am going to kind of reorganize some of these a little bit. Let me pull this out of here. I typically like to have this one be the first one. Nope, I lied. This one be the first one. I lied again. Which are you? That one? There it is. I like that to be the first one, is this sandwich here. And the other ones, I really don't care about that, and then that, sure.
Is there a reason for that?
When I start duplicating stuff, eventually this piece, I want to lock it in so it's just that piece. Get rid of the symmetry so it's all one solid shape. I can tweak it, and it'll still modify the other three corners. Okay? Now, with this workflow, what's great is that if I change it later, I don't like this, at any point, I could have done exactly what I did. Pull my cube out of there, rearrange those symmetries. I could even pull this out of here, delete the symmetries, and then just remake them, okay? And sometimes you'll see that Cinema just has a fit, and it doesn't like the symmetries as we put them on there, and so we have to tweak them. So I'll add that back in, this back in, and then that back in, and change that. There we go. Okay? So at some point, I'll eventually lock this symmetry so it's actually just that piece, and then that'll automatically symmetry the other ones. Now, one more thing that I want to do is I want to see what this is going to look like all smoothed out. Eventually, we're going to have a nice, smooth model. The idea with box modeling is that you work very, very low resolution, as low as you can get, and then you smooth it out at the end. That's the idea with it. So with this selected, I'm going to hold down Alt and do the Subdivision Surface. And now I can see this is what it's going to look like all smoothed out, okay? So again, I can come back to that original cube, grab a point, move it, and see what it's going to look like on the entire shape. Now, as beginners, do not work with that subdivision surface on, because you will accidentally do stuff that will break your model, okay? So that is simply for you It's a toggle to preview it and then get out of it right away, okay? And the reason for that you'll see once we start adding a little bit more detail. All right, so the first thing I want to do, this is just setup. I should probably save this. There we go. The first thing I want to do is I want to pull that arm out of my model here. Now, to give you an idea of how I'm going to be doing this, let me open up Photoshop real quick. We have to pull out the arm in a certain spot so that it flows nicely. The biggest thing that we have to focus on here, because of how we're creating these surfaces, is making sure that edges flow nicely around it. If you look at a model of a car, which I apparently closed, car 3D model, you'll see edges and how they're flowing all the way around the surface. The height of these is consistent with the height of those. The height of these is consistent with the height of that. If there's a change, you can see how they flow into all of these different changes that we have. There's no jagged edges all the way around. If I were to look up bad topology, here's an example of bad topology. Okay, here's a head. You can see the edges are going up and down. There's triangles. We do not want triangles. They're all over the place. This is good topology. Nice, smooth, flowing surfaces. Now, in a still image on that character, it might look fine with those. Most likely not, though. Most likely you're going to see something in there. When the light hits it a certain way, you'll see like a little corner or an edge or something weird. So something we'll focus on is making sure our edges flow nicely around. Okay? So let's just open this up. Let's go there for now. All right. What software am I in? There we go. So this is with my mouse, so you just have to forgive the quality of this. All right. So there's my drone. Now what I need to do is I'm going to have these arms that are going to pull out of here, and then there will be like a little propeller type thing there. Same thing on this side. So notice how I have this big gap of flatness between those two things. So basically where this edge pulls out, or this arm pulls out, I'm going to have an edge kind of lining up. And if you remember back to our first assignment, we were doing the mini room, and we did that chair. This is exactly what we did there. We kind of lined up where we were going to have our divisions. So this, I need to add divisions so that I have a nice little edge right here. If I don't have that, I should have drew that on a separate layer. There we go. If I have this box like so, and I have this division coming down the middle and this division coming down the middle here, and I try to pull the arm out of this, number one, that's way too big. But number two, what would happen when we smoothed it out is we would have this arm, and then between them we would get this like big dip that would happen right here, okay? And then the same thing there, and then we would have this arm, and then we would have a dip, and that arm, and this arm, and then we'd have another dip, okay? So the closer we have these divisions to that edge, the more roundedness we'll have. The further away, the tighter we'll have that, okay? So I'm going to hit K. That will bring up 3 tools. We will typically use L. That'll be our main one. That's going to be the loop path cut. And remember, you can right click and get all of these. Loop path cut is right there. And I'm just going to click an edge right, let's say here, and click an edge right about there. Now before I click it, I pay attention to that number, 45.299. I can just round it to 45. If I click here and I adjust this line, okay, 45 is not going to be there. It's actually probably going to be 55. There we go. Because this is from 0 to 100. So if 45 is this one, then 55 will be that one, because 45 plus 55 is 100. You can just eyeball it too and say, that looks square. Good enough. Okay? So now I have my divisions. So now I can go into this and this, go to my extrude, it's D, I just remember what software I'm in. I just want to verify. Yep, so there's Extrude. It's MT or D. Okay, and then I'm going to pull this out. And you'll see how it pulls out from all four sides at the same time, even the bottom. Now, as I pull this out, typically it's going to do this. Okay, my default settings have two things that are typically unchecked or undone. Preserve groups is typically not checked. That basically says if I extrude two faces that are touching, I want to preserve the connection between those two faces. So I click that. Doesn't change anything on the model except it opens this up. Now it wants to know what angle are you allowing that to happen. So I'm going to make sure that this is high enough that it actually shows that connection there. It might be 91, it might be 89, it might be 50. You play around until it works. Okay. So I'm pulling this out, and I'm going to take this offset back a bit further, like, I don't know, 10 maybe. What I don't want to do is extrude it too far. The further I extrude this, that doesn't look like an arm anymore. That looks like something big and blocky. I want to extrude it just to get the shape, and then I'm going to pull it to the direction I need. Okay, so I extruded it just to get a little bit of movement. Then I'm going to switch to my move tool and just pull this out further. That looks more like an arm. And again, I have to be careful that I don't move it up, because that will break it. Okay, so I'm just pulling it over and pulling it that way. Looking at this, maybe I want part of my drone to be a little bit longer than the other. Maybe it's this narrow and that wide the other way. I can do that too. So I'm going to switch to my top view. I'm going to go to my points, switch to my marquee, make sure tolerant is on, only visible is off, and I'm just going to marquee these points here and here. And then I can just move this. And that allows me to stretch the proportions of that main body of the drone so that it obviously is not perfectly square. Okay. Now, as we extrude anything, we're going to get faces in places that we currently can't see. So when I extruded these faces out, it also created faces underneath between those two pieces. So if I were to turn my subdivision on, I'm going to get this weird like puckering between these two pieces. Let me turn my shading off. Okay, so you can kind of see this line happening right there. It's not so apparent in the middle. Right there it's definitely apparent. So I'm going to turn off all of my stuff here, look underneath, and yep, there's a face right there. So when I have this face and that face connecting, that doesn't create good flowing geometry. So I need to delete those faces that are overlapping. So I'm going to go to Faces, click on these two, and then just hit Delete. And now when I turn my stuff back on, I shouldn't get a puckering in the edges, and I don't. Cool. Okay, so far this is looking, drone-like. It's definitely too soft for a drone. It's kind of like Play-Doh-y. I'm going to add some divisions. So I'm going to go back to my cube here. There we go. I'm going to add a loop. Let me turn my lines back on so I can see them. And right here where this comes in, I want that to be a little bit crisper. So I'm going to add a division. Why aren't you letting me select? There we go. Oh, I'm not on edges. And then I can go right there. And now when I go to my subdivision, that will be a little bit of a crisper transition going into the other piece. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to add another division, let's say right there. Okay, so now those edges are just crisper edges. Anytime you do anything product-wise, you're going to have a mix of smooth areas, like really smooth areas, and really crisp areas. Okay, so we have some smoothness happening, let's say around this area like this, and then we have some crispness happening right in these corner areas. Let me turn that off. All right, now I'm going to pull out the area that's going to have the motor housing. So I'm going to switch back to those faces. I'm going to go back to extrude, and this time I am going to pull it out. And this is going to be where that's going to be set up at. All right, so that looks pretty good. Yeah. Looking at proportions, I'm looking at the size of this, where the motor is going to go. That might be actually a little bit too big. Let's shrink that down some. That's better. Okay. All right, I'm happy with that. Now, what do you think is underneath these faces here? If I turn all this off, what do you think I'm going to see when I flip this over?
No face.
More faces. Right? Every time we extrude, we'll get faces. So we have to make sure we're aware of that. Yep, you always delete those faces. Wherever they're connecting side by side, we have to delete those faces. Okay? All right. So now we need to talk about a little bit of edge flow type stuff, or a little bit about surface flow. So let me get rid of my beautiful illustrations. I should just get a tablet here. There we go. Bless you. So if I go here with this, and then I have, yeah, so this is like jutting out like that. And then this next one is also jutting out like that. And then that one is out here like this, like that. Yep, okay. And then we have this division kind of coming down the middle. All right, so what I want to do is I want to create something round right here. That roundness is not supported by what we're seeing as far as divisions go. This roundness, you can see it pushes outward. This goes, I can't see it because of that color. Let me pick a different color. There we go. This point of the circle goes out, this one goes out, this one goes out, right? That's how the circle is made. It's like pushing outward. This division is good. This one is good, this one is good, but these ones are not, okay? Those ones are kind of going against what the circle wants to do. The circle is pushing this way, and those divisions are pushing the other way, so what I need to do is move those so that they go in the same direction. So they all kind of flow with the direction of that circle. So I'm going to switch to the top view, and you'll see me do this a lot as I model stuff. I'm jumping between views because that's the easiest way to make sure that I don't accidentally screw something up, and I can see it from multiple angles. So I'm going to go to my points, I'm going to grab my points here, I'm going to grab these, and then just move these so they're on that side. Okay? So now this is more in line with what that circle should be doing. That's good. Yeah. Okay. I think I also want to do that here. I think this probably could be pushed in slightly there. And I think this could also be pushed in slightly there. Maybe not yet. I'm just going to add a loop here. I just want to add a loop there and add a loop here, roughly about the same spot or distance. That's pretty close. All right. So now I'm going to grab these points here and just kind of push that in a little bit and push that in a little bit. And all I'm doing is just giving this a little bit of a roundness to that. So basically the body will feel round and this arm will feel like it's being pulled out of it versus a square block that I'm trying to pull this shape out of. I put these in so that it holds the shape going from one spot to the next spot, okay? I think this probably should shorten down or thin down too. This might be a little bit too thick. So let's just squeeze that in, that's good. And I'm going to push these in as well. All right, so that feels a little bit more drone-like. The thinner arms, obviously, because it has to be small enough to lift itself off the ground. That's good. All right, so let me turn my stuff back on. There we go. So that's feeling more drone-y. All right, so now I need to add this area here. I want to get that to be a perfect circle where I could grab that and extrude it inward. Right now it's not set up to that. So I need to add more divisions. Now what I love to do is be able to grab a division straight across here, which looks like I can do that, and straight across there. This one is not going to let me do that. You'll see as I drag this, it wants to go back to that other spot. Maybe I can do that, we'll see. I think that'll actually be fine. And then I'll add another division. I really don't want to add that division there. I'd like to have a division on this side of that goes across. So I may have to put that one in manually. So I'm going to hit K, and then I'm going to do the line cut, which is K again. And I'm going to click, 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 click. Oops. And click that. All right. Now, that does give me a triangle. I'll have to move stuff around later to adjust where that triangle is. But that's what should be a good starting point for my circle. I think maybe another division right in here should be good. There we go. Okay. So I have enough divisions here where I can just start to tweak these shapes so that they look rounded right in the center. So very similar to what we did on the product shot when I was going and taking a square item and making it round. That's what I'm doing here. And again, if I need to create a cylinder, which I will, I'll create a cylinder and use that as my starting point for this, which I think I need that right now. So let's create a cylinder. Let's bring this over. 8 divisions should be good. And oops, I'll hit C on it so I can see that, and then scale it down. There we go. And then I'm just going to throw this onto a layer and lock it so I don't accidentally, adjust that. All right, it might be hard to see, but once we start grabbing points, then it becomes much easier. All right, so let's push that in. Let's bring this right to the edge of that. Oops. And grab this one. Grab. And this one's just going in the middle because I think I may have one too many edges, that's all. And then this side, I will have this, you can stay there. This one will come here, and these ones will come kind of in the middle of this. Yep, and then this one would be like that. All right, so this edge that I added manually right here, I don't actually need. So I'm just going to right-click and dissolve to get rid of that. And then I'll go back to my points. Oops. And then just kind of split these around so that they are nicely balanced throughout this. So you'll see how I'm just creating this little perimeter that's going to go around the outside of this. So I do need another one. I'll add a loop right there, and we'll just adjust stuff from that. Let's see. Well, that one doesn't want to go there. Let me go back to edges. Edges. This one, I'm going to dissolve that one too. That's good, that's good. All right, I'm going to get rid of this edge, and I'll just rework where that edge is going to go. So I'm going to dissolve that edge. I'm going to dissolve this edge. I'll go to my points here. And you'll see how I'm just kind of reworking where this is at. Now, you don't want to delete just random points. I'm deleting those with the intention that I will then add those back into the mix at some point. All right, so now I need an edge that's going to go here to fill in this area. So now I'm going to use my knife tool and just split this right like that. Now, I can't just leave it like that. I will go back, I will tweak it, but just for now I need to get this nice division at the top where I have this nice rounded area. That's good. All right, that's my cylinder. Let me just hide that for now. Apparently the cylinder's not even on it, so I must not have assigned that. There we go. All right, so now that looks pretty rounded right here. Obviously I have a triangle. Now this is where if I needed to have a triangle, I could have one here because it's not going to actually be seen because I'm eventually going to push this down and put something in its place, okay? If I had a triangle out here, that would be a bad thing. But because I have it kind of on the inside hidden, I don't need to worry about it. So I'm going to go to my faces now. I'm going to grab all the faces that I would use for that. These. I'm going to go to extrude. I'll go to extrude inner first. Extrude it in. Then I'll go to regular extrude and just push it down. So you'll see on the surface area I have no triangles. Here I have a triangle, but again, I'm not going to notice it or I'm not going to utilize that because the motor will be sitting right in that spot, okay? So I can get away with it there. All right, so that's good. I'm going to go over here too and just start grabbing some of, grabbing some of these faces and just doing a little bit more work over here. I think this needs to be a little bit more defined. So I'm going to grab this and extrude upwards. And then I'm going to grab the edges here and just start tweaking what these are looking like. So this is going to come in a little bit. That's going to also come in a little bit. Now this is where I was talking about making sure you're not working with this on. If you look at the distance here between this point and that point, when I turn this off, that's a lot smaller. Okay, it's not terribly a lot smaller, but it's a lot smaller. Typically what happens is you might move something and think you have all this space and butt it right against it. When you turn off that subdivision, I've crossed over that line and now it looks horrible. So that's why we never want to work with that actually turned on. When you get more comfortable with the software, yes, definitely you can work with it on. But as beginners, definitely don't work with it on. Let's go here to this. I'm just going to grab all of these. Not you and not you. And just push that back. Okay. And then let's see what that looks like this. Let's turn our divisions off. All right, so it's starting to work. Now we do see, it might be hard to see up there. Let me put a different material on here just so you can see this better. Reflecting here. The width is smaller, that's bigger. There we go, okay. So if I move this around, you can see right there, there's a weird little thing happening right in the center of that spot, okay? As I move around this way, same kind of thing. You'll see that we can definitely see where these two surfaces are not blending nicely around. When they do car renderings or modeling, they actually have what's called a zebra pattern that they'll put on the car and make sure that the lines for the zebra pattern are flowing nicely around the car. And if they're not, you get stuff like this. And that tells you right away, hey, something's going on. So let me just delete that and look at why it's happening. So if I go back to my cube here, turn this off, look at the points. So something with this point is just not being happy. So let's go inside, and look at right here where I extruded that, there's extra faces. I wasn't paying attention when I extruded that up, and so that's why we have a problem. So I just need to go into the inside, stop hitting that button, and delete these. All right, so that's good. Turn these back on. Clean, clean, clean. Uh-oh. That shouldn't even be a button. I don't know why that is. There we go. And so now we have a nice smooth flow happening all the way around that. Because I extruded that up, I got those extra faces. All right, so at this point in that part of the model, I think I'm pretty good that I could then lock in that bottom symmetry and start tweaking that one. So that's what I'm going to do, and that's why I have that one separate. So I'm going to hit C on it, and when I hit C, that gets rid of the symmetry on that piece, just that piece, and now this is its own little item. Okay, now it's not connected, And what I mean by that is if I were to grab these points and I did the UI trick, let me make sure I'm correct on that. Grow selection, yes, UI. Oops, I lied. All right, let me do it this way. Let me grab this face and lift it up. Okay, it is connected, good. Sometimes it won't be connected when you do those symmetries, and it'll actually have like a gap between those pieces. If it does, we grab everything, we right click, and then we go to optimize. And that just puts all those points together that are touching. So the reason I wanted to do this is because typically your drones don't have the legs like this. Like there's the body and these chunky legs come out like that. Typically these are like maybe raised up a little bit and obviously tapered some too. So that's what I want to do. I'm going to grab this, move that up, and then I'm going to go to scale and scale this down. There we go. Okay, typically they're raised off the ground so that you have room for the legs, room for everything else you might have, the camera, whatever. If I needed to adjust the position, I could also, let's say, move that over some. There we go, so that's looking good. Now, if I didn't have my symmetry off, if it wasn't baked in, I couldn't do that. If I pulled one piece up, the other piece is going to pull downward. So I have to bake it in, connect them, and then I can move that whole wedge as one. And then the last thing I'm going to show for this one is just fixing the bottom. Typically the bottom of these, like on like on this one is flat at the bottom. It just like rounds off. So it doesn't have this little dip in there. So I'm just going to go to my faces here. Do my UI trick. Go to my scale. Oops, too many. Let's try that again. This. UI, no. Let me just scale this one in first. That's what I'll do. And then pull that out. Okay. Now in here I do have a triangle. I can't have that triangle there, so I'm going to go to edges and dissolve that edge. Oops. And you'll see that what that leaves me though when I dissolve that edge, yeah, I'm on the right one, is I have this face. Okay, these two faces. And these two faces, I wish that would just zoom in like other softwares do not have triangles. They don't have triangles, but they also don't have quads. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 edges. So I'm going to use my knife tool and just split here to there. And now each one of these is a quad. This one has 4 sides. Come on. 2, 3, 4. That one has 4 sides. That one has 4 sides. That one has 4 sides. I probably could do that up here too. Yeah, I'm just going to do that here too. I don't know why I didn't do that. Dissolve. Again, it doesn't matter because it's hidden, but OCD Sean wants to fix that. There we go. Cool. And now if I were to go back to this, turn that back on. Now I have these little bumps on there, which look kind of cool. It could be part of the design. If I don't want it, I can start eliminating edges, dissolving some edges, moving things around. Okay, so that's as far as I'm going to take the body today. Next class I'll show more of the modeling part of this, or not next class, yeah, maybe next class. But the ideas are going to be the same regardless of what we're doing. You'll see I have some very rounded shapes. Again, I have some crisp shapes. That's the idea with this. If this didn't look perfectly round, it's not going to look like a drone. Let me just save this before I start screwing with it. If I had this face here that was just kind of like that, that could look weird. It actually looks fun. No, it does look weird. Right there looks very weird, and right there. So I need to blend it in better. Okay? Or if I had just some random point that was just kind of moved out like this, you know, that would look kind of funky and not really like what a drone may look like. Again, in some cases it may work. In this case, I'm really not enjoying that. Okay, and again, I don't move anything away from the center because then that breaks open that, and I don't want to do that. Cool. Okay, so that's the process to start off modeling your drone. Yours is going to be different than mine. You don't have to follow the exact pattern, but we want to work basically big details into smaller details. Those vents that are on there, I wouldn't model those until the very, very end. There's a seam line that goes around it. I don't model that until the very, very end. These little things where we have these big shapes in here, that's what I'm modeling now. This bump in there, I can model that. This battery pack coming down or whatever, I could model that into it. If I'm doing this drone, these little eyelets, that's a very end thing because they're fine details. If I'm doing this one, basically this body would be one shape that I'm doing, and then those legs would be a separate shape that I would do and then duplicate to those other pieces. Okay. This one here too, I would basically be doing the same kind of thing. These ones' legs actually looks like they're kind of like rounded. Too many folders. Instead of them coming straight out, it looks like they're actually like angled out. Edges, turn that off. Add a division here. Oops. Points. So it looks like on that one it's kind of like this. And then like that. And this is the cool thing about box modeling is that looks horrible, but once I kick that on, now it's going to be nice and smooth. Okay? So the same thing is going to apply across the board. I'm not going to go through the entire like, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing that. I'm going to show bits and pieces because everyone's is going to be different. The next thing I'm going to show, next class is how to do the motor, propeller, all that stuff. If you want a guard, it's going to be the same thing. Build a guard, you can symmetry it, and then put it where you need to. Yeah, it's a very repetitive process. Once you understand the basics of it, it's just the same thing over and over and over again. And if it helps, definitely get a drone topology or wireframe. If you can find a wireframe of a drone, this typically will help new people kind of see what they look like, see how the edges are flowing, so you know, okay, I need to add divisions here if I'm going to do that. This is smoothed out, obviously. But you get an idea of where those divisions are at. If you're doing landing gear like this, which obviously it has to have something to support itself, some sort of leg, that would be a separate piece. The whole motor, each one of those is going to be a separate piece. But this main body all has to be one piece so it has nice flow from start to end. If I'm doing the camera, that's another piece too, like that one.
Have you done like little animations with the legs at all?
I had one that actually had the legs kind of move up and then fly away, or whatever, moved up as they were going. You could do that, yep. The key shot is not the best for doing some things. One of the students had, and this might have been a glitch in, I think it was Keyshot 6 we were using, but she had 3 propellers and she wanted them to, they were like this on an angle and she wanted them to spin like that. And Keyshot didn't like it because this to Keyshot was rotating like that. So it was rotating everything flat. And so we had to go in there and do that animation in Cinema and then bring that in, and it worked. It's just a matter of, we had to do that extra step. A lot of drone stuff on here. They are. Cool. So questions on that yet?
If you were, I guess with your other components like that, box model is good for the main body, but when you have your other elements, are you basically starting from that same point as well?
Right. So when I'm doing my propellers and all the other stuff, I start off right here. So I'll just say, let's say I'm going to do my motor housing. I would start off with a cylinder because it's more cylinder shape. And then because I'm going to be moving it to these other spots, if they're perfectly cornered, so I have, instead of this rectangle, I have more of a square, I could use a cloner and have the cloner automatically do all 4 corners at the same time. If they're not, which in this case they aren't, I could just use, like we did in the environment one, and just use an instance. So I could just say instance, there's my new instance of it, put this where I want it to go, and now anything I do to this one will change the other one, okay? And if I have a group of items, I just drop all the items in the group of that instance and everything is happy. That make sense? And like I said, as much stuff as I can get away with not having to do over and over again, I do. So like the legs, I'll model one leg and then flip it over to the other side. If I'm doing the propeller things, same thing. I'll do one and then have it duplicated around. If I'm doing the camera, there's only one camera on this one. Cool. Anything else? All right.